Last week, the Seahawks capped off a strong preseason that wasn't just about them going 2-1. It was also about the opportunity to see the second-year guys back in the fold, to see if they were ready to take that gigantic leap that coaches often say they will into second year. Coach Carroll has said many times that players take their biggest step of improvement from year one to year two. We also got ourselves a heaving helping of rookies, and boy, this draft class is looking mighty fine. Even the undrafted rookies are having some kind of impact here. More Bobo, please.
More Bobo.
The team would appear to have all the makings to go make a run this upcoming season with seemingly the perfect mix of old and young and a bevy of talent across the board. We'll have to see if that's going to be the case. But before we turn our attention to the Rams this upcoming week in this opening game of the football season, let's take one little look back here into this preseason. And specifically, I want to take a look at three players here over the course of these next couple of videos that I'm going to pump out here that had a good measure of impact in this preseason. They looked good on tape, but also because these are guys that I think are going to be part of the Seahawks' future. And the reason I want to kind of highlight them now especially is because these are guys that unfortunately I think are just stacked up a little bit on the depth chart. It's not a matter of them not being good enough. It's a matter of this being a contending team this year and them just having to kind of wait their turn. But once they get their turn, based on a little bit on what I saw in this preseason and knowing a little bit about some of them coming into this preseason, I think we've got ourselves some guys who are going to bring some impact to this team down the road, and we're going to look at as being kind of foundational pieces in their own right as we move forward. And one of these guys, no one really saw it coming. But the first one I want to talk about today is the second-round pick out of Auburn, Derick Hall. This was a guy coming in that you were very interested to take a look at. Number one, he's coming onto the Seahawks who are stacked up with edges across the board, Uchenna Nwosu, Boye Mafe, Darrell Taylor. How is he going to get out there and play? And he better be good if he wants to play because he's got some good guys up ahead of him. A big part of what you wondered about with Derick Hall, though, was his power and brute force going to translate to the NFL game? When you look at college players going to the NFL, quick guys on the college level, uber fast guys on the college level will be able to translate to the NFL level, at least as far as that base sort of ability goes. If you're fast as a 4.3 guy, you'll be fast on a football field, right? But if you're strong on a college football field, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to then be strong as a pro. You walk in the door, you're going against guys that have been in an NFL weight room, NFL offseason programs for years, maybe 4 or 5 years. They got that grown man strength. And so your ability to just overwhelm guys is oftentimes going to be reduced. LJ Collier was a guy that learned this lesson all too harshly, a guy that relied really solely on power in college. That's the only way he was going to get his job done, and that just didn't translate at the next level with our Hawks. So I was worried with Derick Hall that this might indeed be the case once again. Now, Hall is a much different prospect from LJ Collier, even though he was actually drafted a little bit later. He's got a lot more significant pluses to his categories than Collier had, including explosiveness and length. He also did what he did as far as his damage goes in the SEC, whereas Collier did it in a little bit of a lesser type of conference. But what we notice when we watch the tape here in preseason is indeed Derick Hall does have that grown man strength. There is a reason that you got KJ Wright saying this.
And I watched him at practice. That practice I was telling you guys about. He was a right outside linebacker. It was blitz period. When I tell you he put just a monster long arm on that tackle and just buried that guy to the dirt, I'm like, this dude is real. And I told him in production meetings when I saw him, I said, I want to put this type of pressure on you, young man. But with the practice that I saw, you could potentially be defensive rookie of the year. And he just looked at me like, bro, what are you talking about? I said, yes. Like with your skill set, with your strength, with your energy, your effort that you have, you could be defensive rookie of the year in what I saw.
Very early on when evaluating the film of Derick Hall, there was one player comp that kept rising to the surface for me above all others. And I wanted to deny it. I wanted to push it away. Say, no, that's too over the top. That's too much. He's not that type of prospect. He's not that type of player. But the more of his tape I went through and watched, the more that comp just became more reinforced. And now as we've gone through the preseason, I'll tell you what, it isn't going away anytime soon. And that guy that Derick Hall reminds me of is Terrell Suggs. T-Sizzle, the legendary edge for the Baltimore Ravens, who played well over 10 years in this league, amassing 139 sacks, a Defensive Player of the Year award in 2011, and was a multiple Super Bowl award-winning champ. This guy's definitely going into the Hall of Fame. And what stands out and why the comp feels so right and true to me is when you look at Terrell Suggs' game, he wasn't an edge that won in your normal typical fashion. And what I mean by that is when you look at edge rushers, be it even a defensive end or a stand-up outside linebacker, when they usually win, when they're productive and they're getting sacks and hurries and quarterback hits, they're normally doing it with 3 different skill sets usually. First step quickness, dip, and bend. And the real good ones can put all 3 of those together at once to become completely lethal. But with Suggs, he didn't really have any of those 3. If you look back, his testing numbers were simply miserable coming out of ASU. He was a guy that certainly the NFL at that time was looking beyond the testing scores and simply at the tape itself to determine this guy knows how to rush the passer. He understands how to get it done, and this will translate to the NFL despite these scores. Where Derick Hall actually has some really good testing scores coming out of Auburn. He beats the pants off Terrell Suggs in that department of things. And while I don't think he's going to quite get to the place of Terrell Suggs in his game, because that's a Hall of Fame career that Suggs put together, and I'm not saying that that's where necessarily Derick Hall is going to go. I think he can be very close and very much 95% of what you got from Terrell Suggs over the course of his career. They also even have kind of a similar signature move, but it all works off of power and strength. That's how both of these 2 guys win. Now they got some counters that work off that power and strength, but that's where it starts. And then the counters that they utilize are also where you can see the echoes of each other in their games. Let's get into the tape though. Let me show you a little bit of what Derick Hall did this preseason and why I think he's just a firm, flat comp for Terrell Suggs. Let's start with the similarities between Derick Hall and Terrell Suggs. Both guys, first and foremost, work off of heavy, violent hands, meaning they can strike you faster than you can land your punch. And when those hands land, it's like a Superman push. Both Suggs and Hall manhandle the tackles across from them. This inevitably makes the tackle want to rush to hunker down with the power headed their way. The opposite of what they would do with a twitchy edge. And then Hall and Suggs can start to play games with the tackle who knows he's got a front row ticket to the gun show and he better do something about it. What sealed the deal for me in the comparison between these 2 was they shared a signature move. With Terrell Suggs, he learned over time to use it at just the right rate. Hall, as we'll soon see, is still figuring out how to strike that right balance. The move is the long arm bull rush, or as I like to call it, the long arm of the law. Usually a bull rush is comprised of driving both hands into the chest of the offensive lineman in an attempt to power walk them back into the pocket. It's effective with stronger edge defenders, and both Hall and Suggs use it well and use it often. The long arm can be better than the 2-handed bull rush because the edge rusher can keep the tackle off of his body so that when the path to the ball carrier or quarterback presents itself, they can disengage easy and go hunt. All right, so let's look at a couple of snaps here from this preseason period from Derick Hall to let me show you a little bit of what I'm talking about in his echoes of Terrell Suggs' game. Here on this first play, you've got the Vikings coming out in a pretty heavy formation, 2 tight end set. Everything about this formation would lead you to believe here that the ball is probably going to be run into the direction or towards where Derick Hall is going. But he is able to ascertain here pre-snap that the ball is actually going to be going more towards the A gap, and he shoots the gap, gets down the line of scrimmage, showing off that high effort, and is able to help make the play on the ball carrier. Another area of the game between Terrell Suggs and Derick Hall that to me is very similar is their ability to twist and stunt inside, or even just jab step inside. They've got kind of an unusual amount of quickness in their ability to get lateral, and that allows them to be very effective on these kind of plays like you're going to see here, which is just a pure twist here right up through the A gap, and he slams the quarterback hard as he gets there so quick. Note here as I show this play over and over again just how fast this big man is getting to that spot from where he starts. And I've got a couple of plays against the Vikings here to show you of this, but this one really stood out as this is very, very fast pressure here that he is creating. Another play here to show off the lateral ability of Derick Hall and just how quickly he can get when he's going sideways. It's very unusual and it stands out in his game. Here, take note if I were to pause the tape right about here. Look at how far away he is here from the quarterback, how much ground he's got to cover to go and eventually get his first quarterback hit, darn near his first sack, and maybe even almost a safety at that. Would have been mighty impressive. But what does stand out to this play, what is the part that's going to come on into the future here, is that ability to get lateral and to use that as a counter. He can do this off stunts and twists, but he can also do it with a hard jab step to the outside where he just crosses the face of the tackle. All of those are going to work in this fashion, and this is a counter-based move to the power that he can set it up with. You can already see how a guy like this can start to potentially sort of set up tackles, chain moves together and whatnot as he starts to develop and get better. Let's flip it on over here now to the Cowboys game, because again, he did play a limited amount of snaps in each of these 3 games. We got a good feel for him, but we didn't get a lot of action from Derick Hall necessarily. And in this Cowboys game, you're going to get to see a lot of the long arm of the law from Mr. Hall. This is where those comps to Terrell Suggs really started to become embedded in my mind, where, man, that looks just like Terrell when he was running in his prime. And on this first snap, you're going to see him give the long arm here to the left tackle. And he's going to be very good about getting him pushed back. Look at the tackle losing ground here. Look at the tackle struggling against the power and strength of that one arm. Now, he's not able to create a pressure here because the quarterback does such a great job of getting the ball out of his hands so very quickly. But you can still understand why this move is so very effective for these guys who have the power and strength to use it. Because as he is able to walk him back, and if I do pause it right here, you'll notice that from a bad standpoint, Hall's gotten a little bit into the chest of the tackle. That's not ideal. Normally with the long arm, you want to keep that tackle off of you at an arm's length. But what he has created is that direct path to the quarterback. If the quarterback were to hold on to the ball a little bit of an extra beat here, an extra second, there's a good chance Hall is going to be able to create a pressure or a sack, because now as he has that direct line of path, and if you just have the one arm up there, you're able to disengage off the block because the tackle doesn't have as much to grab and hold on to keep you in panic mode from getting that sack. And then you have that pathway directly to the quarterback. A few plays later, we've got Derick Hall in a wide 9 technique, and he is absolutely going to be shot out of a cannon here. I mean, hell on wheels. He sends a good, strong, long arm punch right into the chest of the left tackle for the Cowboys and instantly sends him back on skates. Like we saw before, you feel the power and strength here. You feel that he's able to overwhelm these tackles in that manner like KJ had talked about. And like before, if I pause the tape right here, you see the technique at play here. Walk the man back, walk him back until I've got a direct pathway to the quarterback. At which case, then I disengage and I've got my beeline to go get him. And that's just what he does here. Breaks off the disengagement, gets after the quarterback. Unfortunately for him, the quarterback could feel the heat coming right up the back of his neck. And so he got the ball out of his hands just in time, but it's a nice pressure. This is probably the most impressive play from Derick Hall in this preseason, and another one where he is going to be using the long arm bull rush. What's interesting here is you're going to get to see how he can use a little bit of nuance with the technique. If you hit the long arm to the outside shoulder of the tackle, then you're going to try to get your disengagement around the outside hip of that tackle. If you're going to put the long arm into the inside portion of the chest of the tackle, then you're going to look to disengage to the inside. And what you do here is if you're setting up this long arm and using it a lot, you might set up a tackle to keep hitting him to that outside portion of his chest, making him think you're always trying to get around the outside of him. And then you eventually set him up for when you can hit him to the inside, get him to overset, and then you hit him up on that inside portion of the chest and you look for that inside disengagement. That is what Derick Hall does here. Comes off the line, overwhelms him with his power and strength, gets him walked back into the pocket, and then once he has that direct pathway to the quarterback, disengages, goes, finds the quarterback, and gets himself his first sack of the preseason, his first sack of his professional career. The third preseason game for Derick Hall was not quite as good as the first 2, and I think it really comes from a place of by the third game, he was really feeling like he could just use that long arm bull rush 24/7, and he overused it, and tackles were really able to then prepare for it, I think, in this game in a manner which made it a little less effective. This reminds me a bit of Boye Mafe. Last year and coming out of college with Minnesota, this guy loved the hand swipe move. He would go to it over and over and over again. And when you watch the Mafe tape from last year with the Hawks as a pass rusher, he's going to it too often. The tackles know it's coming, they're prepared for it, and so they can handle it. You've got to have those other counters you can go to make them not allowed to be able to just take away the best thing that you do. Same thing here with Derick Hall. He's just going to the long arm a little bit too much here in this game. They're ready for it. He's got to find that right balance, but he's going to find the right balance. Did take Terrell Suggs a little bit of time as well with it. And as we saw with Boye Mafe here in this preseason and his ability to now kind of build up the counters in his own game, especially getting inside, and where a lot of the pressures came from Boye Mafe here in this preseason, I expect this to come with the growth of Derick Hall's game. So on this first snap here against the tight end, he unveils the long arm, not able to be quite as effective with it or get quite as much push with it here against the tight end, but that's going to happen from time to time. Too much long arm bull rush. That was indeed the case here against this Green Bay Packers team, and this rep does show that off. He's going against the left tackle here, and how I know on this particular play that the left tackle is ready for this long arm, gearing up for it, amped up for it, ready for it, is that the tackle, instead of dropping back into his kick step, forming that pocket around Jordan Love, he actually takes a couple steps aggressively to go out there and meet Derick Hall. And he's doing this purposefully. Why I say that is because in the long arm bull rush, part of its effectiveness is off of the player being able to convert speed to power. You're trying to get as close up to full speed as you can by the time you're actually laying that first contact in. And what the tackle's doing here is not allowing Derick Hall to get up to speed to create that speed to power. He's meeting him before he gets up to the edge of the arc, smart by the tackle. He's able to then neutralize this long arm bull rush to the point that he's able to get Derick Hall basically eating grass by the end of this play. A final play here against the Packers, and again, remembering that Derick Hall did not play all of this preseason. Each game, it was just a collection of snaps. But this was his most impressive rep from this particular game. Another one where he is calling upon that long arm bull rush. I told you that was his go-to and at times only move in this Green Bay Packer game. He just fell in love with it. But here he does find some effectiveness with it. He goes to the outside shoulder of the left tackle here. And as we talked about earlier, when you're going to go to the outside shoulder in a long arm bull rush, well, then you're looking to then displace your hips to the outside. You're looking to create the pressure from the outside. And that is what he is able to do here. This is a little bit more of a slow burn long arm bull rush because he's just slowly overwhelming that left tackle with the power over the course of this play, but still very effective and still shows off how he's got that already grown man strength as a rookie. It's going to take one hell of an uphill climb for Derick Hall to get out on the football field and make solid contributions this upcoming season. But it's not because he's not good enough. It's simply because the Seattle Seahawks have so thoroughly stacked the depth chart up ahead of him. I still believe in these Terrell Suggs comps. I look at his tape and now more than ever, I feel like he is very closely aligned with that player and what he did. And hey, he used this same skill set to become a Hall of Fame player. Maybe Derick Hall can do the same. I'm not saying he's going to be there and go there. He's just got the same kind of components he's working with. There's a reason why when KJ Wright's going out on the practice field, looking around, and he sees Derick Hall, and he's seeing this guy on the practice field as a rookie going out there and handling guys in one-on-ones with the grown man strength that he was utilizing in college, and KJ knowing how many of those guys through my years came here from college, and all they had was power or strength to work off of, and they came into the NFL level, and that was instantly neutralized right quick. Well, with this guy, it's not. One reason why KJ thinks, well, he's doing it in practice, he's going to be doing it on Sundays, and he will win with that on Sundays, something that I do believe as well. You might have to wait a little while to feel the full measure of impact that Derick Hall has to bring, but that impact is coming. What we got this preseason was just the lightning. The thunder, it'll be here soon. My name is Brandon. This is the Hawks Nest. Please hit the like button. Please subscribe. But beyond all that, don't you ever forget. Go Hawks.
Practice, doing everything we got to do, man. Let's come out today and put on the show from top to bottom. These boys not playing, but guess what? Should be no fall off, man.